Hi, welcome to Comptroller's Corner. I'm your host, Pat Curry, joined as always by Buffalo Comptroller Mark Schroeder. We're going to start today's Comptroller Corner by asking a question. Would it be difficult to work 24 hours in a single day? Well, for an office of about a dozen civilian dispatchers, they did it 100 times this past fiscal year. This was one of the findings of Comptroller's audit of the fire department's payroll, which found that a fire department's overtime has skyrocketed across the board for both civilian and firefighter positions. This is costing taxpayers $10 million per year, and it has been failed to be addressed by the fire department since the first audit of the payroll was completed last year. Now, Mark, you are doing all you can to try to bring attention to this problem that the fire department's having controlling overtime, and it's a very expensive problem.
Yeah.
$10 million that could be going for other city services is being used by the fire department for overtime, and it's a matter of adequate staffing, and particularly in the civilian workforce, which is much smaller and should be easier to manage.
Yeah, so this is an ongoing concern. So as you know, we do what is called anniversary audits. So this isn't the first time that we've identified this startling information. And so when we do it again a year later to find that they're just not being responsive, Patrick, we've talked about this before. When I first started as a controller, there was only one certified public accountant up there. Now we have 10. This is serious business. We know what we're doing. We know what we're looking at. And this is concerning to me and should be to the taxpayers of the city of Buffalo. This is what happens, I believe, when you have a mayor that has been serving for over 12 years. They lose track of what's happening in vital areas. This is concerning to me. The fire commissioner just recently resigned, and the mayor's spokesperson said that the parking commissioner is now going to be involved with with fire matters, which is outrageous. It's an outrage. I'm certain that within the officers of the fire department, there are some capable deputies who can maybe take a look at this very, very unbelievable number. This $10 million of overtime, mostly with people who are clerical or people who aren't really sworn officers of the fire department. So it's concerning to me, and we're going to keep watching it, and we're going to keep offering solutions.
Now, you mentioned the puzzling statement that the parking commissioner would be involved in this, but the parking commissioner was involved when you presented your findings last year, and he sat down with your auditors and went through all the issues that were addressed in the audit, but nothing changes. In fact, things have actually gotten worse, much worse. Now, let me go over some of these numbers.
Sure.
The emergency responders overtime have increased 27% to an average of 274 hours per employee. Now, in the civilian overtime has increased to 400 hours, an average of 400 hours per employee in the civilian workforce. Yep. That's the average of about 10 weeks of full-time service just in overtime. And overtime in civilian dispatch has increased 67% in that span. So if the parking commissioner didn't do anything about this last year, what makes anyone think that he's going to do something about it this year?
Yeah, well, see...
And why would the parking commissioner even be involved in a fire department matter?
Yeah, that would be a question for the mayor, and I think it's time that the mayor get on top of this. The mayor has the responsibility ultimately to the taxpayers of the city of Buffalo. His responsibility is to investigate this situation. And I'm calling on him to do so. I'm calling on him to take a look at this audit and then begin to implement some of the recommendations, not the Commissioner of Parking. And so it's very, very concerning. We've been here before, Patrick. This isn't the first time that we've come up with this audit where it's very, very concerning that there is mismanagement. They are not appropriating funds properly by doing this, and it's very concerning to the auditors, and it's very concerning to me.
So I just want to talk a little bit about these employees that are working 24-hour shifts in one single day.
Dispatchers.
It happened 100 times
Yeah.
in the past fiscal year. Now, not only is this inadequate staffing, obviously there's not enough employees. There's about a dozen employees in the dispatch office. There's obviously not enough to handle the workload, but also the idea of public safety being at danger here. If you're calling to report an emergency, a fire, and to know that the dispatcher on the other end of that line is at the tail end of a 24-hour shift or a 32-hour shift or whatever it may be, that's concerning, and that could be a public safety hazard for the citizens of Buffalo.
There's no question about it, and I'm certain that if you ask the credentialed fire officers, they are probably very, very concerned about this, and I'm certain that they're aware of it. It doesn't seem to me that there is any communication that is taking place within the fire department. The rank and file officers and the rank and file firefighters are in a very dangerous situation each and every day. Every time they go to work, they do the best that they can. But there needs to be leadership. There needs to be a management team. There needs to be somebody looking at this. And again, it all really goes back to the mayor. Even the concern that I've had for the whole time that I've been the comptroller, even the timekeeping that is done in all departments of City Hall and beyond is a paper system. It's not even automated. 2017. And so this is a major problem, and these are things that we've addressed. It's obviously not going to be addressed by this mayor, and the citizens of Buffalo need to realize that.
One of the issues brought up by the time when the audit was first completed last year, the first part of the audit, was that employees were approving their own overtime. Well, that has happened 24 times. 24 times in this audit is that employees are approving their own time, approving their own overtime. None of these overtime approvals, overtime issues are actually gaining the required number of signatures for these sorts of sign-offs. And one of the things that you mentioned in your audit is that they've got to start following the rules as far as overtime goes. It's the taxpayers' money, and you shouldn't have a situation where an employee is approving his own overtime and signing off on it.
Yeah, Patrick, the whole thing. This is not hard. It isn't hard to do. All of the commissioner, the commissioner who just retired, and all of the deputies, they are sworn officers. Sworn. They have sworn to do the best that they can to protect the citizens of Buffalo and also to protect the taxpayers, because that's their responsibility. The Commissioner of Parking is not sworn to anything having to do with the fire department. And to have him intimately involved last year, which was a failure, and this year, which is even worse, is an indicator to me that the fire department is out of control. Those who are in the field, those who are in the engine houses and the different places across the city of Buffalo, I believe that they're doing the very best that they can, but they're not being represented well by the management team headed up by the mayor of the city of Buffalo.
And the parking commissioner, he's also the commissioner of the Traffic Violations Agency. He's also the head of Buffalo Civic Auto Ramps. Is there too many? Is he being spread too thin here? Now he's in charge of the fire department for some reason. What are your concerns about that?
Well, my concern is that for the longest time, for 10 out of the 12 years, Deputy Mayor Steve Casey was running the show. And now it appears that the mayor wants Kevin Helford, the commissioner of parking, to run the show when it comes to financial matters having to do with audits that are very, very important, audits that indicate that there's mismanagement, audits that indicate that they're disorganized, audits that suggest that within the fire department, $10 million a year in overtime. The police department, $13.8 million in overtime, mostly for clerical non-sworn officers. There's mismanagement everywhere. And I'm certain that a parking commissioner is unable, he has no accounting background whatsoever, so what his role in this. Now, if the mayor wants to delegate this, he should delegate it to Donna Estridge, who is the Commissioner of Finance. Once upon a time, under the Massiello administration and under the Griffin administration, there were actually finance people within the fire department and also the police department, watching out, looking at the ledger sheet, making sure that the overtime was under control, and communicating then with the mayor. There's no communication going on here. This is the wild, wild west.
Now, you mentioned the police department. We're seeing the same issues in the police department, especially with the civilian overtime. Now, you mentioned the total overtime is about $14 million for police.
Yep.
And the civilian employees, similar to the fire department, are earning 450 hours of overtime on average per year. So this goes beyond just the fire department. This is an overall problem with the city in controlling these civilian overtime levels. And one of the points you made in your audit, in both audits really, is that there isn't as much lead time as far as training and hiring for civilian positions as there is for a firefighter or a police officer.
Yeah.
There's a lot of training that goes into police officer, a lot of training that goes into being a fire department, not so much being a janitor or a dispatcher or a clerk. So that should be an issue that's easier to address than emergency responders, sworn officers overtime, is this civilian aspect. But that's the area where we're having the most problems.
So, Patrick, the whole training aspect is also problematic in my view for both fire and police. If there is accumulated $25 million a year in terms of overtime for fire and for police, and it's really not geared to the police officers or the firefighters, that's problematic. The training is inadequate as well. So if there was $25 million and most of it went for training for Buffalo police officers and or firefighters, I suppose I might take a different view. But I don't take a different view when I know that there's mismanagement and when the city auditor, who's a CPA, has said a number of times, especially on the police audit, that the recommendation is that there be a financial director that's engaged, that's employed, that's watching this, and then reporting to the commissioner, who then reports to the mayor. That's the way it should work. That isn't the way it works right now in City Hall. It doesn't work that way at all.
Now, this was a topic of discussion at a finance committee meeting today. I want to talk about something else that was brought up a little bit later, but you weren't happy that in the middle of this discussion of this fire roll, or the fire department payroll, that it was kind of cut short and would say it will be discussed at a later time. You're hoping that if this is discussed in another meeting, that it happened in the council chambers and is televised, just like the meeting at the finance committee meeting was today.
Yeah, so let's be clear. What Patrick is talking about is the finance committee is the meeting that is certain council members who are on that committee. And so let's just be clear, citizens of Buffalo. The Common Council votes with this mayor 99% of the time. And so when there is a discussion, it's the council's prerogative to make these conversations short, especially when the mayor's spokesperson, who very seldom ever goes into the council chamber, was hovering above, making his presence known, making sure that the council members do not talk too much about this issue with the press there. And so this is what happens when a mayor is there too long, and when the commissioners are there too long, and when they really don't want to address the issues. They want to kind of cover it up. They want to hush it down a little bit. They really don't want it out there with only 69 days to go before a major election in this town. And so this is what happens. I've seen it, and it repulses me, actually.
Now, Mark, we got to take a brief break. When we come back, I want to talk more about that Finance Committee meeting today.
Okay.
Stay tuned for more Comptroller's Corner after this message.
I'm sick of this. I'm sick of dealing with you. I'm sick of
I work 6 days a
and
week.
that.
Who do you think you
Stand up
are?
straight.
Don't you ever talk back to me again! You just shut up!
What are you crying about?
What a child learns about violence, a child learns for life. Teach carefully. We can show you how. Act against violence. Call 877-ACT-WISE for a free brochure.
Comptroller's Corner. The Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority owes the taxpayers of the city of Buffalo more than $4.2 million. Today at the Finance Committee meeting of the Council, of the Common Council, it was acknowledged by the Law Department that now the Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority admits that they owe taxpayers $4.2 million. The Comptroller wants that money back for taxpayers, and the BMHA, as it's known, is looking at selling assets in order to recoup taxpayers, according to the Law Department today at the Finance Committee meeting. Now, Mark, this is very welcome news for you, because back when this began, you said the BMHA owes taxpayers $4.2 million. The BMHA actually wrote that off their books and said that they didn't owe taxpayers $4.2 million. Now, we're finding out that after well over a year of lawyers looking at this issue, you were right. The BMHA does owe taxpayers more than $4 million. And the BMHA now admits it all of a sudden. And you're looking to get that payment from them absolutely as soon as possible, because it's long overdue.
Yeah. So listen, Patrick. When you're in, the comptroller's office, you're just trying to do the right thing, and we have a responsibility, right? And so let's just start from the beginning. The chairperson, the chairman of the Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority, is also the treasurer appointed by the mayor for the city of Buffalo. That is an inherent conflict, so that when the BMHA decided to write off the $4.2 million, they weren't authorized to do that at all. They have no authorization to do it. Where was the mayor's city treasurer / chairman of the BMHA to say, listen, that was misguided, we can't do it that way? No, the comptroller's office had to come in to say to the Common Council, they did this all wrong. Now, Common Council, please investigate. They investigated, but they did absolutely positively nothing. Why? Because they vote with the mayor 99% of the time. You get the trend here? This is what is happening in city government. So even when audit and control tries to do the right thing, there's roadblocks all over the place, and they don't want to do it. And so it's not so much that I want the BMHA to pay the city back $4.2 million. I believe it highlights that there's mismanagement going on, and there's misappropriations of funds going on. That's a problem, because the BMHA, the Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority, is a shadow government run by the mayor, Byron Brown. Mayor Byron Brown runs the BMHA. And so there's 26 different housing developments across the city of Buffalo, and this is affordable housing opportunities for those who are the most vulnerable within the city of Buffalo. Mismanagement, mismanagement, mismanagement. And so when now, after a year, the council, because because the comptroller's office went to the finance meeting and made the corporation council take a look at this. So they took a look at it, and then 10 months later, or whatever it is, Patrick, you know better than I in terms of what the framework of time is, then they come back and say, oh yeah. Well, meanwhile, a whole year has gone by, nobody's watching but us, and nobody's doing anything about it but us in the comptroller's office.
Now, this money owed to taxpayers by BMHA, there seems to be no reason why this decision took so long to find out. This decision just validating exactly what you said, $4 million owed to taxpayers by BMHA. There was a lot of discussion at the time when the BMHA thought they didn't owe taxpayers, but now very quietly we're finding out that they acknowledge that they do.
Yeah.
They have a lot of assets across the city. They're a large organization. They get about $40 million per year from the federal government, and they own land well in excess of the $4.2 million that they owe the city of Buffalo. So it's really time to not drag their heels on this and to make taxpayers whole at the end of the day. You would like to have had that money before the close of the fiscal year. That's too late for that, but sooner the better, and you're going to keep an eye on it and make sure that money comes into taxpayers.
Yeah, well, the thing is, Patrick, we've done this already. We've gone there. We've explained this to the council and to the council president. They've known about the $4.2 million for over a year. And what did the council do? The council appropriated more money for the BMHA. And so, listen, I'm all for appropriating more money if the money is being managed properly and if the money is being used to help those residents who live in the 26 different housing developments across the city of Buffalo. But that's not what's happening. It's not happening. The people who are living within these housing developments, go there. Go visit. I've visited almost every one of them. And they are not good conditions. They're not they don't have appropriate number of employees doing the maintenance and doing the care that needs to be had in these places. It's totally mismanaged on the ledger sheet, and it's mismanaged in the building that the people are living in.
So you mentioned this conflict that the city treasurer has because he's also the chair of the BMHA. So in essence, as city treasurer, by the charter, he is in charge of collecting money owed due to the city.
That's right.
But he's also the president of an organization that owes $4 million to the city.
Yeah.
There's an inherent conflict there. And you mentioned some other conflicts that we see in city government because we mentioned the parking commissioner. He's also the head of the Buffalo Civic Auto Ramps who contracts with the city of Buffalo. So is he signing for both parties when we enter into contract with Civic Auto Ramps? The vice chair of the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency, who signs off on contracts for the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency, is also the director of the Office of Strategic Planning that contracts with the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency. So he's signing contracts for both parties too. There's really no check on what these organizations are doing if the person signing off for the city is the same person heading up the organization that we're contracting with.
So I think what the citizens of Buffalo need to reflect on is over the last 5.5 years that I've been the comptroller, I have brought in credentialed people who have a responsibility to the division, whether it's accounting or audit or debt management. They report to me. And then we make the decisions that we have to make. As what you just illustrated here, this is a free-for-all. It's a free-for-all going on. And what's even worse, Patrick, just take a look at the parking for a second. Each and every year, for every year that I've been the comptroller, there is a sweep of money from the Parking Enterprise Fund that goes to cover other things. That's Kevin Helfer, the Commissioner of Parking, who's involved in all of this. Now he's involved with the BMHA, and he's involved with financing, and he's involved with fire, and he is like the deputy mayor now that Steve Casey's gone. It's problematic. You need to have people in the departments who know what they're doing and who have some fiscal responsibility as well. There are a number of firefighters who are also CPAs and lawyers. There are a number of police officers I know who are professional accountants and also lawyers. So why don't you find these people and put them in the management team so that they can help manage the books properly and do the rank and file members proud? This is a free-for-all, and it's problematic. And the people the police officers and the firefighters, they know. They know there is discontent. They know there is mismanagement. They know there are more problems going on within that management team, and they're troubled by it.
Now, you just filed your annual audit plan. That's required by the charter to lay out the process by which you determine what you're going to audit in the upcoming year.
Yeah.
And you do a risk analysis, a risk assessment of every department and operation of the city, where you weigh the financial risk, how much money is involved, versus the control risk, how susceptible is this department or procedure to wrongdoing. And you take those two factors and add them together, and what you have is a chart where it weighs both of those factors. And at the top of that chart is issues that you have been looking at and you'll continue to look at. Yeah. For instance, fire is at the top of the list for both risk factors. Fringe benefits, you're doing an eligibility audit of both the city and the BMHA to make sure we're not covering people that we shouldn't be covering. And utilities is also on there. You have done utilities audits across the board, and one of them, of the city's streetlights, led to $1 million refund from the utilities to taxpayers because we're being billed for streetlights that didn't exist until you came around and did this audit.
So let me just give you an example of what it means to have people who have credentials, who know what they're doing. So my first year as controller in 2012, I inherited the previous city auditor, who was not a CPA, he was an attorney. And I'm reading his audit plan, and I'm thinking to myself, why are you announcing what audits you're going to be doing over the next several months? Why are you announcing it up front? Because the different departments, they could then begin to do some things to make it look like they're doing the right thing. So then when I brought in the CPA city auditor, his response to me was that he wasn't going to operate that way. And I said, tell me more. And he explained to me that the two factors that you mentioned are the things that you look at when you're going to be doing a audit. And so you don't announce that you're going to be doing an audit on the Department of Public Works, or you're going to be doing an audit here. There's certain factors that are most important to audit and control, and then you begin to identify what audit you're going to do. And then with respect to the department, you let them know maybe a couple of weeks before or a week before that you're coming in to do the audit. The way they did it before was ridiculous.
And also, you're looking to prevent these issues before they happen. Oftentimes there was an audit done, and after there was some wrongdoing exposed, you're looking to prevent that kind of wrongdoing, and you're looking to do so to have the most impact on the city's bottom line. Now, speaking of the city's bottom line, that would be included in your popular annual financial report.
Right.
We talked about this on the show previously, but this just won an award. It's the fourth year in a row. It won the highest award from the Government Financiers Officers Association, the GFOA Award of Excellence. Now, this is the fourth time in a row, fourth PAFR you've done, the Popular Annual Financial Report, but it's also the fourth award you got. And this is a report that has been award-winning for taxpayers, and they can find it on our website.
Yeah, so I think the people of Buffalo need to know is that this is something we initiated. This is something that's optional. There's probably only 60 municipalities across the nation who do this. We chose to do it because of our mission is to be transparent. And we want the taxpayers to know everything they can know about expenditures and revenues. Also, I have the very best staff. I have CPAs. I have the best deputy controller that's ever served the city of Buffalo. I have a CPA who's a special assistant, Claire Waldron, and I have you, Patrick Curry, who are watching over this to make sure it's award-winning.
Mark, that's all the time we got for Comptroller's Corner. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining us at home. Make sure to check out the Comptroller's website at city-buffalo.com/comptroller. Check out our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, and our Twitter handle. Thanks from everyone here at Comptroller's Corner. This is Pat Curry, signing off.